Lexie Natasha tweeted and was just saying a bunch about pride and how proud she was of this team. Have you kind of had similar emotions the last couple days, and how do you balance that with a very...
Nobody in the NBA or WNBA anticipated it. A player who struggled to earn a spot on the team during her first 2 seasons, questioned every shot she made, and secretly worried that today would be her departure. Then, very immediately, everything was different. Lexie Hull not only underwent the greatest metamorphosis in women's basketball history, but she also became one of its most intriguing tales. And now, after years of enduring the Caitlin Clark storm, she has finally opened up about what it has been like. The actual one, not the polished media version. Before any of this made sense, she disclosed something that no one really anticipated hearing. Additionally, you must comprehend Lexie Hull's situation prior to Caitlin Clark entering Gainbridge Fieldhouse. The Indiana Fever selected Hull with the 6th overall pick in the 2022 draft. It sounds like a dream on paper. Top 10 choices, a Stanford graduate who, in her last season, won a national title, was selected to 3 All-Pac-12 teams, and was named to the Class and Elite 90. This was meant to be the beginning. Instead, due to the bad sickness in those early years, it became a struggle that most outsiders never really noticed. Not quite as good. They were among the poorest clubs in the league because they had losing seasons and completely missed the playoffs. However, Hull had to fight all the time to make the squad, a circumstance that no young player wants to be in. Each and every night mattered. Every item has a negative meaning. She was aware of her fearful behavior. She scored fewer than 5 points per game on average over her first 2 seasons. She barely managed 4 minutes despite playing more than 20 minutes per night in her second season. 6 points. The figures are accurate. She was being held back by something. Later on, Hull would identify that thing precisely. She was willing to talk about those early years in public, something that few athletes ever do. See what she said to Glamour magazine. There were times when I thought I might be benched or cut if I didn't shoot. A Stanford alumnus, a top 10 draft pick, and someone with exceptional credentials are all lying awake, worried that one missed opportunity could kill their careers. That was what it felt like to be on a losing team with nothing to make you feel better. Those early years were really nerve-wracking, she remarked. No playoffs, a losing culture, and no room for error. The stakes were too great to win. Everything was important as a result. Furthermore, that kind of pressure affects more than just your shot. It enters your mind. On the court, it alters how you move, think, and breathe. However, something occurred that altered not just Lexie Hull's career but also the team's overall course and even the state of American women's basketball in general. Hull was suffocating, and nobody outside was noticing the fever. In the 2024 WNBA draft, Caitlin Clark was chosen 1st overall by the Indiana Fever. Here is a brief synopsis of Caitlin Clark's persona at the time in case you need a reminder. The most decorated scorer in NCAA basketball history, regardless of gender. A player who single-handedly broke decades-old records, turned Iowa Hawkeyes games into sellouts and nationally televised events, and elevated Big Ten women's basketball to a must-see event. The frenzy surrounding her, which had never been seen for a women's basketball player, was about to be tested by the WNBA as a whole. It was genuine. Her first season's record-breaking fan engagement and output solidified her place as the league's most significant player. All of a sudden, the Indiana Fever emerged as the WNBA's most talked-about, contentious, and respected club. There were sold-out audiences, national broadcasts, and a media frenzy everywhere they went. Lexie Hull spotted that Caitlin Clark was sporting the Indiana Fever shirt. In reality, no one discusses how Caitlin Clark has impacted her colleagues. Beyond visibility, there were other considerations. There were other causes besides larger crowds, sponsorship deals, and the cameras that followed them. According to Lexie Hull, the main distinction is what takes place inside the lines during a game. Something that, unless you know what you're searching for, is practically invisible. Almost everyone who has ever played this game has a different perspective on the floor than Caitlin Clark. She has a fantastic idea for the court. Her demise is distinct. Her ability to draw defenders inspires coaches as well. Open perimeter shooters who have no barriers in their way. It was incredibly freeing for someone like Lexie Hull, who had spent 2 years torturing herself over every shot attempt. When you consider what preceded the transition, Hull's portrayal of it acquires new meaning. She confidently stated, "I know I'm going to get open shots, but I don't need to worry about whether they go in or not because I've put in the work to set myself up for this, and I'll live with the outcome," once Clark arrived. Freedom is that. The figures confirmed the kind of freedom that can only be attained when the pressure valve is eventually unlocked. In 2024, Hull's three-point shooting percentage was 47%. 1%. It was a lifetime best and one of the finest shooting efforts in the league that year. Her three-point percentage fell back to 36 as a result of those looks. 7%, exactly where she had been in college prior to Clark's death. Even better than the words, the figures convey the story. However, the court was not the only location where things shifted. At this point, the plot becomes considerably more intriguing. This is because Lexie Hull and Caitlin Clark's off-court connection generated controversy, attracted media attention, and became one of the most talked-about subjects in women's sports. Many were really worried about Clark's adjustment to a locker room full of strangers when she was chosen. She had played with her childhood co-workers, Gabby Marshall and Kate Martin, during her 4 years at Iowa. In a room where everyone else had already made connections, she was the brand's new face when she got to Indiana. The worry was genuine. Would she be a good fit? Would the current players welcome her, or would her attention offend them? And this is what actually took place. She and Lexie Hull fell in love almost instantly. They were hanging out off the court in Indianapolis at the end of that first season. As if they had been friends for years, they were laughing, experimenting with different drinks, and uploading on TikTok together. During the Olympic break, the WNBA visited Mexico. Fans loved the connection, which was undeniable. But by 2025, the dynamic had grown to such an extent that it had a completely different name. What had been a duet became a trio once Sophie Cunningham was transferred to Indiana in the off-season prior to the 2025 season. The three of them, Clark, Hull, and Cunningham, began referring to themselves as the Trace Leches, and their combined efforts produced some of the league's most popular and funny content. Clark's well-known caddies at an LPGA Pro-Am competition were Hull and Cunningham. They were always making fun of each other on social media. When Clark shared pictures from Fever Media Day on Instagram with the message, "We are so back," Hull made fun of his lack of sun exposure, and one of the most hilarious remarks of the off-season, Hull told People magazine that Clark would also benefit from some sun exposure. It was the kind of taunting that only occurs in friendships when both parties are genuinely at ease with one another. Additionally, it provided the WNBA fan base with a first-hand glimpse into the personalities of the players. Hull stated that Clark will attend her wedding, which has been scheduled since Hull and Pittsburgh Pirates outfielder Will Matt became engaged in April 2025. Before getting selected in the 6th round of the 2019 MLB draft, Matson was a standout baseball player at Stanford, where the two first crossed paths. He moved to Indianapolis to be with Hull after retiring from baseball due to a string of ailments, which speaks much about the foundation of her life. Even if everything has been friendly and happy, Hull made the decision to confront a side of playing with Caitlin Clark in a way that most people in her position would have ignored or completely avoided. And it's the aspect of this tale that merits the greatest focus. 2025 was one of the WNBA's most difficult seasons ever. Hull characterized Clark's arrival as having a specific demeanor, a seriousness, a focus, and an edge that implied she had completed her adjustment and was prepared to rule. Before the season began, Hull told reporters that Clark had clearly changed in his second year. "It's obvious that she's here and prepared to conduct business," according to Hull. And that read appeared to be perfect at first. Hull was playing the best basketball of her career through the first 7 games of 2025, leading the WNBA in three-point percentage at 55 and scoring more over 10 points per game. 6%. The Fever appeared to be a cohesive unit at last. Then the wounds began. Clark missed a lot of games due to his quad problem. Then there was a groin problem. There was then another soft tissue issue. One of the most devastating pictures of the season was taken on July 15th, when Clark suffered his 4th injury in just a few months during a game against the Connecticut Sun. After giving it her all and witnessing everything go apart, Clark appeared to be holding back her tears as she got off the floor, rested her forehead on the basket structure, and sat on the bench with a towel over her face. And Lexie Hull was seated next to her, as a true friend does when words fail to convey their emotions. Hull later discussed Clark's leadership position at the time in an honest manner. "Why me?" queries. Despite putting forth more effort than anyone else in the building, she was upset that her body would not cooperate. It was a challenging chapter. The fever prevailed despite Clark missing a large portion of the season. They persevered all the way to the WNBA playoffs, where they defeated the eventual champion Las Vegas Aces in a crucial Game 5 that required overtime prior to Indiana's final defeat. Hull's two-way grit, which isn't evident in a box score, was a major factor in the run. They took control, made plays that kept games close when the team needed them, and consistently defended the top perimeter scorer on the opposing side. She continued to consider a topic that she ultimately concluded the general public should be aware of. Lexie Hull decided to quit being cautious with her remarks after the October 2025 Women of the Year feature in a magazine. Along with the Sabali sisters and Nafisa Collier-Jones, she was one of 5 players highlighted in the magazine. For someone who had quietly emerged as one of the league's most esteemed players, this distinction was fitting. However, her engagement, attire, or basketball statistics are unrelated to the parts of that interview that went viral online. Hull made it clear that it focused on the disadvantages of facing the most well-known female athlete. I think there is some envy over the fever because of the media attention and the supporters who have stood behind us since Caitlin came. On its own, that would have been sufficient to generate headlines. But then she went farther. The fever has heard what other teams have to say, she said, as opposed to conjecture or outside rumors. Hull says he's heard players and teams in other locker rooms stating they can't let the fever win. The target is real. It's true that every team puts forth extra effort when they play Indiana. And Hull has been at the heart of it ever since Clark arrived. Her response to everything is fascinating because of what she chose to do with it. She made no complaints. She didn't behave in a victimized manner. She leaned in. Hull said, "It's okay if something outside of our control gives you more desire to defeat us. If that's what it takes for you folks to come and work harder, then great. Everyone should think that everyone is giving them their best. I think we do get everyone else's best." Being in the middle of one of the most controversial situations in women's sports is handled with incredible composure. Yes, since Caitlin Clark draws attention from sources other than sponsorship deals, fans, and photographers. It covers opponents who designate all of Indiana's games as postseason contests. Included are referees under a microscope. Those who have never been to a professional basketball arena watch, record, discuss, and weaponize every move a fever player makes. And Lexie Hull has lived in all of it for the past 2 years. She has seen it directly in a way that no outsider could. And when she finally decided to speak her truth, she did it with a clarity that cuts through the cacophony. There is something worth considering when you consider Lexie Hull's whole journey. She also joined the league as a talented player on a poor team, going through seasons where every shot appeared to mean the difference between life and death. Her confidence was shattered. Her involvement was unclear. The franchise on which she had built her career was in ruins, and she had little control over it. Then, when the most disruptive force in the history of women's basketball emerged, everything changed. The team's direction, the culture, the supporters, and even Hull's self-image as a player. And instead of becoming overwhelmed by it all or disappearing into the background, she became a pivotal figure in the most compelling story in the WNBA. Thanks to the relationship, the social media moments, the cooperation in court, the heartfelt sideline scenes, and the open glamour interview, Lexie Hull has transformed into someone she was never during those challenging early years. A household name. Her ability to shoot three-pointers made her dangerous. Her defense made her essential. However, her determination to be open about what it meant to be in Caitlin Clark's world made her legitimately interesting to those who follow this league regularly. The question that currently hangs over everything is what will happen next. Hull began the offseason as a restricted free agent for the first time in her career, which changes things in ways that even she admitted she wasn't fully prepared for. She has made a life for herself in Indianapolis. Her fiancé relocated to be close to her. She has said how much she loves Indiana overall, the series, and the fans. But in the business realm of professional sports, sentiment isn't always significant, and the WNBA's collective bargaining stance has added layers of uncertainty that nobody in the league can now effectively navigate. Any offer that is made to her might be matched by the fever. Furthermore, given what she contributed in 2025, it is expected that Indiana would do whatever it takes to keep her. Caitlin Clark posted a picture of the two of them on Instagram with just 3 letters. Please share your thoughts in the comments section, subscribe, and enable all notifications so you don't miss anything. We'll see you in the next one after you click the video on the screen.